Oh, I usually height you. This box. And then get power supply. Yeah. Surge protector. Yeah.
Hi, Mama.
Hey.
Hi.
Good morning.
She can't see you, honey.
You shy.
Hi, Mama.
Hi, how are you?
So good to see you. You look exactly the same. Oh my
I know, she doesn't age.
Thank you. You all look the same except for this one looks a little different.
This is Octavia. Xenia will make her way over to say hi in a moment.
Tell me how old you are.
I'm 9 turning 10.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Okay, Sans, do you want to say hi, honey, or maybe later? Later?
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, baby
Thanks for saying
girl.
hi.
Bye, Maisha.
Hi, honey. Aw.
What do you think, Sans? Do you want to say hi? Because we're going to get started, Mama.
She's gonna get started. She's got a lot of people to talk to, honey.
No,
It's okay.
No.
There's
It's all right, Mama.
Take your time. Take your time. Nice cup. You still have it? It didn't break on you? Because they're so fragile.
You know what's so funny? So, this is the you've seen this. We've had this forever. This is similar to your cup.
All right.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say it's not that one. Yeah.
No, but your cup inspired this cup because your cup did break.
Yeah, they break. Yeah, they broke. So now I make one that's like stainless steel. So
Oh, I'm gonna get that one then.
yeah.
Hi, you look cute. You look beautiful.
You got your hair done. I see you, Mama.
All right. You know, it's funny because this morning Octavia had a so weird talking to you here because do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, I don't know, we gotta do this in person,
Yeah, for real.
you know?
For real.
Yeah, I'm kind of dead to the world on Saturdays a little bit. So Octavia had a sleepover. I showered. I did my hair, slapped my makeup on. We're changing Zooms. I'm like, no, I don't want to sit. I want to sit on the couch. I don't want to sit there. I want to sit over here. So anyway, thank you. Try to be punctual, but we're a little behind. We're okay.
This is on time.
Okay.
Are
you doing did you do somebody before me?
No, it's all spaced out. I can't handle that. I'm a chill person.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone packed in.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not that person. I work really chillax.
Did you have a birth yesterday? You had a birth yesterday?
Yeah. Can you tell in my face?
No, I can't tell, but I'm like, oh my God. That was before I was like, look, if baby comes, you're tired, you need to reschedule.
Yeah.
It's all good. I'm like, wow, she had a birth yesterday and we're doing this today. It's pretty intense.
Right. Yeah. It was quick, but it's not really the timing that makes it hard or not, because sometimes it's a short birth and I'm still just tired.
Yeah.
Just depends how it goes. So.
Well, you give a lot to your births.
And it's just the energy. and and it was just like cool that happened the way that one happened. And then to talk to you because we did not make the hospital. So just like I know when we come to that part, like we wouldn't make the hospital. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we don't. And
I mean, I just think it's so funny. It's also, you have a different, it has to be an interesting space for you to be in, not only for like your own births, right? Your own birth story, the birth of your boys, but also as you experience birth and then you go on to child rearing and then looking back, like I find it really interesting. I was speaking to a friend the other day who's she called me and she's like, hey, I remember, you were really pro doula. What's that like? I wanted to get a little more information. And I'm like, girl, aren't you due in like 4 weeks? And so, but it's funny because your perspective, I guess, for being what you do, how you stay fresh and present and not diminish it has to be like an ongoing thing for you, I would imagine. I mean, you were as present and as validating as I could have ever imagined. But, it's that same thing. And it still drives me nuts when people say, oh, just wait. And there's this level of not dismissiveness, but there is like, well, I know better because I've done this and you don't know, but not validating that current space, right? Of like what you're in. And when I talk to new moms or, you have friends that are kind of coming up and they call you for advice, as now this like group of women that we're in now in our older years, you have new folks coming up and they're like, this, and I try really hard to not, number one, you want to be positive and you want to speak the truth, but you also don't want to devalue that experience coming up, you know what I mean? And so I was actually thinking about you even prior to this because a friend is, she's going to be delivering at Mount Sinai or whatever. And I'm like, oh man, it was just like, it seems like last week and also like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So for you to like, yeah, I don't know how you do it because you have had so many births, and to stay connected and present has to be, it's a gift, I'm sure. I mean, that's why you're doing it, right?
I mean, it's definitely a different experience for me. And then again, it's not because every birth is so unique and so the same.
Right.
Just so cool. And like, say I'm like coming into a client where the circumstances are really different. And I'm like, wow, how is this going to be really different? And then it's not. And it's like, duh, birth is birth. Right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it is just really different. So it's just like that thing. And but I will say it's gotten easier for sure, but not I want to say yes, but no. Yes, but no. Like I don't get blown away, which is good because like you can't handle your heart exploding that hardcore, that ridiculous. You know what I mean? But it's still weird to like witness the miracle of life and the gods and the angels and the heavens. And then you walk outside into Manhattan and everyone's going to lunch. And you're just like,
right. Yes. That is, you know what? That is so funny because, particularly with Octavia, there was like this very like, I had that we can talk about it, but like I had that like crazy, like endorphin, like euphoric experience that you only like hear about, or that, people are like, oh, that's not real. And then you walk outside to the grit and you're like, where did I just leave? Like, where am I? And I remember vividly leaving the hospital and like saying, so like, are you going to like, am I going to like see you? Like, are you going to come over? And you were like, yeah, I'll see you. And I'm like, yeah, but when? Like, I was like, wait, don't go. Like, it was really so bizarre. You're like on this island, like seriously, the island of Manhattan, right? And we're like, oh, bye. With the baby. Like,
It is crazy because it is so intimate and such a profound time of our lives. And
Yeah.
then it's like, I come into like your super intimate day with these people, and then I'm like, all right, bye. But it's hard on me too. It's like, I miss everybody.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally do. I totally
Yeah.
do. And then like I remember like a lot of things, and I like surprise myself too. Like I'm sure I don't remember all the things, but I just remember like little detaily things,
And that's got
which
to
is
be so cool. Like, I don't know, like you have little drawers upstairs and in your heart of like all those moments. It's cool.
and then like when I'm out and about and my kids are so tired of hearing it, I had a client in that building. And like, what? You had a client in that building? Yes, I had a client in that building. But I'm thinking about you when I passed your house, you know what I mean? Or I passed that cafe where we met, or whatever it was, or where I was when I received the call. And I'm like, I remember I was standing here and so called me.
Yes.
Or before Uber, because I've been doing this a long time.
Yep.
Trying to get a cab at 4:30 in New York City in Midtown, and like almost having a baby on the sidewalk, because they're like, no.
Oh my God. I mean, I can't. Oh my gosh.
And for those who don't know, that's when the cabs change shifts, and they all are trying to go home and don't want to pick you up.
That's right.
And I have this mom on the corner holding on to the hydrant, while I try to get a taxi.
I mean, I can't. I just.
I passed that corner. I was like, before Uber.
That's right. Before Uber, because Octavia, we didn't have. Oh my God. Like begging. I can't even, the level of stress, like I can't even imagine. And I'm trying to think for Octavia, you were at our house for both before we went.
Had to have been, yeah.
Yeah, you were
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there was no Uber with Octavia. We took a cab.
Right. I remember
Right?
people in the street were trying to help us hail the cab.
Yes, that's right. Because that's what happened. The neighbor helped. That's right. And the cab actually backed all the way down the street to get us because they ran. I forgot about that.
Yeah. See the things in my head. And when we were coming down in your apartment building, someone tried to touch you.
Yes.
Right.
It was Krista. And I was like, please don't touch me.
Yeah.
French neighbor and said, don't touch her. Remember?
Oh, then John just came in. He said, then the French neighbor said, please don't touch her, like in her little French accent. That's so funny. Yes. Oh my God. Isn't that so funny? Oh my God. Yeah, those are the things. I mean, that's like,
Right.
it
I
was
know.
crazy. And the cab driver, it's so funny because I have such I don't know. I think what's so cool about, and I don't know what you're disclosing or whatever, but I think what's been so cool about our relationship and then getting bits of information from people through the years, like it's so layered. And I think what has been so cool to see you do is watch you are so embedded in the human condition and how many people that you see and how many people that you navigate. And, talking to cab drivers I love talking to cab drivers anyway, side note, but that day, that cab driver, he was a Greek man. His name was Ioannis, which is part of my family's name. Right. And it was just weird. And he drove and he was like trying to blow lights because we didn't know if the baby was going to be born in the cab or not, because we didn't know at that point. And he didn't even charge us. Like, that's such a New York story where it's like, it was, the neighbors are hailing the cab drives back, like down the block to pick up the pregnant lady that's like, could deliver in the cab. We don't know because it's New York City. And it's just so, I don't know. I just love it. So cool. So cool.
Oh man, this is fun. This is fun. Yes, I've learned so much about people. Obviously I learned a lot like couples too. I've learned so much, which is hilarious, but I won't get on to that.
That's like another podcast.
That's
Gonna
a
be
whole
like,
other
that's gonna a
thing.
whole other thing. Like your level of information that you have on, not information, but you have statistical points that you
Yeah.
can like write a book on of
Yeah.
different relationships.
It's so much. Okay, yeah. So tell me,
Okay.
before you had kids, right? What was your view of birth?
It's funny. Before I had kids, prior to even like wanting to have kids or discuss kids, I didn't really have I wasn't brought it up in a family where, there was natural birth discussed. It was from my perspective, from what I was raised around, right? It was like almost like a Mad Men type of scenario where women were in the hospital and they were smoking and maybe they, put a cloth on, over their face the last 5 minutes to like take the baby out. But it was so, as I grew up, I really didn't have a touch point to birth at all. And, I think that a couple of in suburban speaking, right? Because we've been in the city for 23, 24 years. But growing up, all of my suburban friends had children, early on I should say earlier than me, right? So they had, kids, in their 20s and even into their early 30s. And so it wasn't a scary thing. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just kind of like a thing. And then as my girlfriends in the city started having children and hearing their experiences and talking about, yeah, I really want to try an unmedicated birth. And then hearing these little nuggets, probably I would say 2 to 3 years before I was ready to, start a family. And it came like that, like the trajectory of Stephanie and when I wanted to have kids, didn't know if I wanted to have kids at first. And then having the light switch, like it was kind of a biological switch that was like, I want to have
How
a baby.
old?
I was 35.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think I want to have a baby. Like it was like 30, it was, I don't know, 35 and a half or something. It was so specific for me that I like took note like internally of myself. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, let's do this. And so at that point, then it started to pique my interest of what my friends were saying. And, I had a couple in the, they live in the Pacific Northwest, they had home births, water births, all of these. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And so I started really small, like in my own planning before you came into my life, just, asking some questions and getting as much information as I could about what that looks like. And then when you start scratching the surface, you start uncovering all of these layers, right? And then it blows up into this massive thing, which is birth, and which was so life altering for me. Not only so much that I just didn't know, so much that I didn't know about women, so much that I didn't know about women of color, our mortality rate. Like all of these things just came like barreling towards me, and then trying to disseminate all of this information, and then also getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant or all of these things. Did I answer your question? What was the question? Yeah. So
what was your view before you had kids?
What was the what?
What was your view of birth before?
Oh yeah.
You had
Sorry, that was a long.
yeah.
But yeah, it was like I didn't really have a a real strong view on it. I was, not that I was indifferent about it, but I just didn't really know. And, or I would say, and maybe it was the time that we grew up, because you and I are close in age, right? You know, in the 60s and the 70s, like from where I grew up, it was women, you know, they had their baby, they went about their business. It was definitely, there was a community aspect depending, you know, of what your family dynamic looked like around children and around birth. But, you know, it was so much like you still had to do the day to day. So it wasn't like, there's so much more around the sacredness of that I didn't really grasp at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Get that. Thank you. How did you hear about doulas? And why did you want one? What kind did you want? And did you have to convince your husband?
So I did not have to convince my husband.
Mhm.
I think we were like, well, what do they do? Like, we're going to invest. Not only are we going to invest our family dynamic into it, but like, what does that look like? Right. So, I am lucky that I have a partner that, you know, knew very early going on before we got married, like, this is, you know, this is your being, this is your body. Like, you know, I'm here for the ride, this amazing ride, but like, you ultimately are driving this ship. Right. So that was good. How did I hear about doulas? My friends. Right. And I also, and I want to say, and I still don't remember how you came to me, but it was not,
Mhm.
I'm going to let you talk. Go ahead. What were you saying? Going to say?
I mean, at that time, most of
It's
my clients,
through,
the New York City doula collective, right?
that's right.
Mhm.
That's exactly right. And so, and I heard great things about that, but then it was just like, are you going to get matched with like whomever, right? Like how do you know who you're going to get when it's this collective, right? And my at that time in my life, I felt very strongly about no interventions. And if I was able to have an unmedicated birth, I knew that that was my best chance of achieving that. And also guidance. So that's kind of what led me to, you know, birth is scary. It's not something that, I mean, I think that raising children is scary, but birth, it's that first, like, there's so much scariness around it and so much beauty around it. But I was like, I felt like I needed help, but I was also like, just so green that I just was like, I think I should get a doula. Everyone's saying I should get a doula, so we should get a doula. But I felt very strongly about, as I started to uncover the layers, that I really wanted someone to advocate for me. And that was really what I think started my curiosity.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm looking at, and then what kind of doula did I want? You know, it's so funny because I'm a very picky, let me rephrase this as we're live and we're recording this. Don't want it misconstrued. I think connecting with, oh gosh, I need to shut this down. Hang on, Maisha. I am gonna.
You're all good. It's
No.
recorded, but it isn't streaming, so.
Okay. Hang on a
Mhm.
second. I
Not
just want to
long.
make sure this is all done here. 1 second.
She works hard. I know. You're so smart. Business, corporate.
Yuck. Hang on. I just want to make sure if this starts dinging, then we need to go into settings, but okay. We're going to go back here. I think it's that connection, right? Like I had trust in the collective at that time that I was going to a place where this is what these women did. And that I was trusting in my due diligence, that everyone was, the moms are at the forefront of what, like I wanted somebody to get me, right? And when I met you, I didn't know necessarily what I wanted until I met you, basically. And I don't mean that to blow smoke. I mean that truthfully, because I also think that I think as women, I've always trusted my gut, but I think sometimes that gets overshadowed. And listening to your intuition and listening to all of that and really feeling like if you don't get on with somebody, and it doesn't have to be that something's wrong or whatever, but that you have to trust that too, right? So
it's a lot. I really feel for parents because I mean, having a first, you don't know what a birth is. You don't know what you want. It's like, how do you shop for a tour guide for a tour? You don't know what the tour is and what you want on the tour, or why you should even have a tour guide. Why don't we just go? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So, and then when you ask me what I'll do, honestly, I don't know, but you should ask me.
But also, yeah, but there was an honesty. I think that kind of like you had all the information, you knew everything, but there was also like, you're not going to say everything is going to be great. It wasn't that. And I was like, yeah, she's like, I want her. Like, I was like, yeah, I want you. Can you be my doula, please?
Well, I don't. And like what happened with me, like when I came into this work and, how we all come into this work and you have your first like 10 births and you are so high, like that high is unbelievable. And you like your first 10 births high is ridiculous. Okay. And all your clients are like, we love you. And you think you are the best doula in the world. And you think some magical thing of you made those births go well and you are untouchable, right? Somewhere around birth 20, I got my butt handed to me and we had major complications, right? And thank God I had that group to come to. And the more experienced ones were like, it's good you got your butt handed to you now. So you could be humbled, because some people, and it's just chance, you can get to birth 100 with no crazy births and you think you're so special. And the ego cut at birth 100, that's a smackdown. You can't handle it. Like your whole ego is destroyed. So I got humbled early, like, oh, shoot. I don't know everything. Things can go wrong. Life is scary. There's no promises. Let me pay attention. So yeah, I was like, My
God, and that is scary. So how did you when you have the things that don't, you have a collective at that time,
Yeah.
then what do you just move forward, right? Like,
having that support and having people that, were, doulas who had been hit like that before and who can hold you and hold space for you. And there used to be a therapist in Manhattan for us, right? There used to be a doula therapist because, people don't understand births, right? You can have a therapist, but they don't get this work. But
Mhm.
she retired and just painting now. She probably can't take it anymore.
Oh my God. She's painting.
She works for all of us. She's like, I'm done. But yeah, and like it's not like a therapist you would like see all the time. You would just have a hard birth and like call her,
Yeah. Okay.
And like I remember her last advice to me was hire a cleaning person. And she was like, it was just little things like that. Like she could hear the whole birth story and come home to a clean house.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Oh, okay. Like,
It's simple things where you're like, oh, wow. Okay, cool.
yeah.
Thanks. But those are, you know what though? I think that's so telling and that's so funny because, did it help?
It did, and it was great. I mean, I don't mind housework. I just don't like certain chores. I'm like, then just hire for that. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, thank you. But yeah, holding space for me and just the humbling. So I am humble. I don't boast. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt that, like, I knew that, but there's also something two things can coexist. You can know what you're talking about and be an ace in your field, but still not boast, right?
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
that.
we are not in control of this thing.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So going back to your first birth, what year and then how did it start? What was the year?
2013.
Oh,
Yeah.
and how did it start?
You mean the actual
Your
like day of?
yeah, day of, and what time was it? What were
So
your first signs that the birth was starting?
it was right before we were breaking for a 4th of July weekend. And at the time I was opening up a new office. So I had known that I was, my birth, my due date was approaching. And so that morning I was just up early. It's like nature's cruel way of getting you prepped for sleepless nights, right? So I was up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., or maybe it was like 7. I was up early and I was just checking email and I was just going through my email and kind of cleaning things up. And I remember feeling like, I wasn't feeling so hot. I was like, and then I went into the bedroom and I woke John up and I was like, because we were off that day because it was July 4th. And I went into the bedroom and I'm like, I think we're having a baby. I'm like, I think I'm having like contractions. And it's funny because I saved it. I have that contraction app or whatever. And I still have, I think somewhere in my Google Photos embedded of like the screenshots or whatever.
Yeah.
And it escalated pretty fast. Like, I think it's funny because we talk about pain tolerance with women, right? And sometimes it's like, and that's not to say it's so hard to like disseminate within yourself, like what your pain tolerance is. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're just like, oh, well, I was cramping. I didn't feel great. And then it kept progressing. And then I want to say we called you around 9ish. Because then I said, I think you should get in the shower because I think we knew like I was having a baby. Like, I think we knew by that point, So he was in the shower. And then when he got out of the shower, I think my water broke because my water broke right on the carpet. And I don't know if you were there or not. I don't think you were there yet. My water definitely broke. I just remember like, I was like, oh God, it broke on the carpet. It's just so funny. Like all of these like crazy things, like it's so funny. Like now that I'm talking about this, I'm like remembering all of these things. And so it was a really sunny, beautiful summer day. It was blue skies, like super sunny. And I remember being in the bathroom then, and I was like, I cannot leave the toilet. Like I was like things started to get very real very quickly. And I think I didn't fully grasp, looking back on it, I don't think I fully grasped what birth was going to be like, and that it's different really for everybody. And you hear these stories that it's different for everybody, but you don't really know until you're in it. And I just remember like, you kind of lose yourself. I mean, you don't kind of, I mean, you do, you're in your own world. Yeah. So 2013, checking email, things started progressing pretty quickly. And I want to say what's the next, what are we, wait, hang on a second.
What time did they come in to the house? Do you know?
I think you came into the house before, it was before 10 o'clock. I think you came. I think it was early. And, you know, my first signs of labor were pretty textbook as far as how quickly everything came together. You know, I started having contractions, you know, then I had my show, then my water broke, and there was like, everything kind of happened so quickly that I was like, like call Maisha. Like it was, you were like, and then you like appeared. And I remember you appearing and like being like, oh God, okay. And that like next section of time was just nuts.
Yep.
And the feeling of it all was really nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you at one point saying, "This is a bad design."
I said that?
Yeah. So hilarious.
What did I mean? This is a bad design.
Like how hard it is to get the baby out.
It's so funny. A bad design. I think I just could not believe, like when you really think about it, I had to really compartmentalize prior to having birth, like watching the birth videos, I couldn't watch them. I really, like I did, but it was just like, I couldn't, I had a hard time putting myself in that position.
I feel like, yeah, like we've seen it or you haven't, but for those that have seen it and you see a baby's head come out of a vagina, you're like, my vagina doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Right. Like that's, you're like, yep, nope.
I don't have one of those. I don't know what that is. No, that's her. That's not me. Right. Like that's a different kind. I don't have that kind.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, it's funny, prior to having Octavia, I had a number of women around me who are like my solids, and they were like, you can do this. And whatever facet that looks like, and whatever birth it ends up being, you can do this. And I really felt like they were not people are like, come on, you can do it. Think positive. Like it wasn't that.
Yeah.
It was really like, here we are, you can do this. And, I also think having you so present gave particularly a new mom that new level of security that added like extra security, where it was reinforcing everything that was there, but it,
Yeah.
yeah.
In the hospital, you were upright.
Yeah.
And that worked for you. I remember the OB kept trying to push you back, like to get more back.
So, it's so funny. So, okay, can we rewind for just a minute?
Uh-huh.
Going into the hospital, and I remember, first of all, like I have such a clear memory of coming into the hospital, and that how you advocated for me and John was like, whoa. Like, and I remember kind of sitting back and being like, I was taken out of it for a minute. And I was like, whoa, like she knows her. She knows her stuff. I was like, whoa, okay, Maisha.
I've also been to that hospital like a million times too. So
yeah, but you're right. So the OB that was subbing in for my OB was a high risk doctor. And I actually, at the end, like she kept pushing me back. And I remember, it's so funny, I would have done things like differently, because I remember you saying, how do you want to sit? Like you were so, there's also that level of like, you were so conscious of the dynamics in the room. And that says a lot about your experience, right? At that time, like just how, that was 9.5 years ago. I can't even imagine now, but how experienced you were to see how you navigated those dynamics. But looking back on it, I would have just told her, like, I need to be up on all fours, or I need to be up. Like I remember, because you're in such a vulnerable position and in space, like and that's a whole other layer of conversation of like women and submission and all of that, and how it comes out during birth and how you retreat back to like, you have this mama bear mixed with what you're supposed to do.
But it's also because you can't fight. So they talk about flight, fright, or flight, whatever, but there's also tend and befriend. And that's what moms do, humans and the animals too. Because when you can't fight, you have to tend and befriend. So it's not just a cultural thing. It's just that when you literally can't fight and you have your children there, you got to make nice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, for
Because you're in a
sure.
vulnerable place.
Yes, that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't my favorite moment of that.
I mean, not to take what it was for me, but it was hard for me. I was so annoyed because you were doing great, right? You were doing amazing, obviously, and it was all fine. Everything was fine. And then she was saying, it's against the laws of physics to give birth to a baby upright like that. And I was like, I've seen it. I've done it. I majored in physics. Like,
I don't even remember her saying that.
yeah, she says it's against the laws of physics. It's impossible to give birth in that. I gave birth in that position 2 times. I've seen many women give birth in that position. I know it is literally possible and has nothing to do with the laws of physics, but and I majored in physics, but
You know, I think, well, I'll tell you, Octavia came down, you know, I distinctly remember her coming. Like I could, first of all, I could feel when we were at the apartment, I could feel her like coming down. Like I remember
Yeah.
being seated in the bathroom and like thinking like, I just want to stay here. I just want to stay right where I'm at, right here.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
Right. And going to the hospital, I remember after, you know, she was like, she left the room and she was like, yeah, why don't you work on that? And
Yeah.
then the nurse, I don't know the time, because the time frame we got to the hospital, and they literally just like took us away because I was already 10 centimeters, right? Like when we got there. But she came and she was like, work on that. I'll see you in a couple of hours. And she left. And then I think whatever had, you know, transpired, then the nurse was like, she ran to get the doctor because she's like, the baby's like, she's
Fine.
here.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
doctor
at
was
that time,
dismissive. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
no, like the OB kept coming in and complaining how I had you back up, like I had you back up, right? So what you don't know is at one point I caught her in the hallway, and something that I'll do is that don't confront them in front of the patient, right? So I
Okay.
was trying to calm her down. So in the hall, I said, you know, she took those childbirth classes, Bradley, all that. I was like, she just wants to do this. You know what I mean? Like, you know how they are. She's like,
You did not. Oh, Maisha. Oh
and she
my.
was like, why am I coming in this room and she's still upright? I was like, you know how these people are in their childbirth ed, whatever. You have to play the game. You have to play the game.
Yeah. And it's so funny because that's like, you take your own ego out of it. And that was like really like, I cannot believe you did that. Like I knew you were doing things behind the scenes because you told me that after Octavia was born, but you never told me that whole story. Like that is, oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I was also really lucky because she came so fast, I didn't like, she was stressed about her heart rate and everything. Like I remember them putting that.
When they come quick, yeah, like when they come quick, they dip. That's just how they go.
Yeah. But like, why was she getting so concerned? Because I pushed,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, you know, I had a lot of damage with Octavia, but you know, I think she was so worried about getting the baby out and thinking about it. Could I have waited? Like, I guess I felt at that time, looking back on it now, that I was forcing her out more quickly because she was so stressed about her heart rate. But I don't remember if her heart rate was tanking or not. Like,
I mean, it's a real call, you know, which is their job.
Right.
You know, which is also where I am respectful to them. So I have friends who are obstetricians and midwives, and like when those heartbeats are on your back, you're in a different headspace. And I have to respect that those heartbeats are on her back. Like I can have an opinion, but you're like, right, like that's a whole other place. Now, when the baby descends into the pelvis, heart rate dips are super common. They usually recover, usually. And let me tell you, all of these obstetricians have had days they don't. So you just gotta, like, they're kind of traumatized by that. And also just making sure they do recover and we're not having a bad day today, you know? So they're in that. And they usually, but if your head is, I mean, a pelvis is a tight squeeze. You know, when I show my clients, you know, the pelvis and the baby, it's not hollow.
Yeah.
We don't have a hollow pelvis. That's all solid meat in there. So it's a lot. And that baby's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that was intense. And to see, you know, when you really think about it, I mean, Octavia looked like, I mean, she was such a cone. I remember John, he was so stressed. He was like,
Oh,
oh my God, is she always gonna look like that? Because she was full blown. I mean, she was such a cone. I mean,
Mhm.
holy heckarama. She was pretty coned. Yeah.
Mhm. She
Yeah.
hung out there for a while then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which I
I
remember, I remember the doctor yelling at me for like, you have to get that baby like out. Like, I remember her yelling me, not like, I mean, she wasn't, I mean, you can't really, cause you don't want to, I remember being like, I need a minute. And they're like, you don't
yeah,
have a minute. You gotta
yeah, yeah.
and that, I think that was a hard space to be in for that
Mm-hmm.
time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it hurts.
Yeah. That was like, I mean, that was intense. It was like, I
Mhm.
don't think I can do this. Like, I don't think I can do this.
That's how it feels. I think for most people, it feels like I can't.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're really culturally in a different space, but in most people from this culture will feel that I cannot.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's a human thing or just a cultural thing, but it's a for sure here, it's not working.
Yeah.
But there's also towards the end when you're in transition, you're like, I'm dying, I can't, I don't want to, I'm leaving. You know, I'm putting, I was like, I'm gonna leave. Y'all can finish this without me. Like,
Yes. Totally. Totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Without a doubt. Yeah. But
yeah.
that was pretty.
I was like, I'm not sure I want a child anymore. Let me think about it as I feel ahead. You know, what?
What?
You wanted a baby?
And I
I'm not.
remember, I will tell you, and I want to say it was with Octavia because you were like, you handed me, you were like, you wanted me to see her. Because I
Mhm,
was like, no. And I still
mhm.
was like, I don't want to see her. I was like, no. But then you were like, she's right there. She's literally right there. And I think that then you know.
Yeah, it helps pull you in because it's so abstract unless you touch or see it, and then you realize it's really not that complicated. You know, you think it's this like calculus exam happening between your legs, and then you're like, oh, it's me and a baby. Here we
Yeah.
go, you know.
Yeah. 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 Yes. So that did like, that brought me in. But you're exactly right.
July 4th, right?
July 4th. And it's so funny because you can say what you will about, you know, the gods or the universe or, you know, Mother Earth or, you know, whatever you want to, whatever higher power or whatever you believe. But, you know, I had put it out into the universe and I was like, I do not want a July 4th baby. They're like, oh, you might have a July 4th baby. And I'm like, no, I am not having a July 4th baby. My due date isn't until a week away. I'm probably going to be late. You know, most mother, you know, I'm like talking about everything that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then that morning, the universe was like, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Having
Well,
July.
I remember you said you would have preferred to have her day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, and it was so funny. I was really upset about it. I was not pleased at all until I talked to my niece, Sophia, who is now going off to college in September. And my nieces call me Nuna because it's godmother in Greek. And so nobody knew I had gone to the hospital. So when I was calling my family, because we went to the hospital so quick, nobody knew anything. And we were calling them and telling them, you know, there's a baby here. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And my niece, Sophia, said, Nuna, you have a baby on July 4th. Every year the fireworks are going to be for her. And in
Yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
my niece completely took me out of it. Like, of course it's her day. It doesn't matter what day we're born. It's our birthday, right?
Yeah.
And so that moment really kind of took me out of, having something that I had associated with it being a negative because it was a shared day, right? So, yeah, it was pretty cool. And we had fireworks. So that night we had fireworks that night because I had delivered so early in the morning. They put us in we were in a room by lunchtime, because she was born at 12:21. And then that night we were going to go because that was when the fireworks were still on the Hudson. They weren't on the east side. So they were on the Hudson. And so we watched the fireworks with the baby. And I was like, oh my God, we have this baby. So that was, I think also it helped me get to terms.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And baby number 2. And she comes back for more. There's this point when I'm with a mom in her first birth and she looks at me and I'm saying, are you questioning why I had 2? And she's like, yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh God, it's so funny because I think, not only did you help with the crazy thoughts of a first-time mother, that's a whole other territory, right? And then the crazy thoughts of the second-time mother, that's a different territory too.
Yep.
And navigating that and knowing that, you got me. And I think that was something that, Octavia, with all of that was instrumental. And, that was such a huge, that's your experience, that's your baby, that's your birth, right? For number 2, I was like, when is this baby coming? You kept telling me, so look, you need to tell me when you're starting a twinge. I don't want you calling me, an hour later, you start having a twinge, you need to call me because births are normally cut in half. And I'm like, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then I also have a text from you going back and forth because I was due, I can't remember I think I was 3 days early with Xenia, but I was like, I was going to acupuncture. I was like, I feel like she's going to be late. I was super worried that they, if I was going to go over, blah, 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 blah. And I had, even though I never had a high reading, but I did have gestational diabetes with Octavia, even though I had switched OBs. Do you remember that I had switched OBs? And then I had one OB that was cuckoo crazy. And I went back to my original OB who ended up delivering Xenia, which was great. But the day of Xenia's birth, that morning, I had gone to acupuncture the week before. And then I had texted you and I'm like, do you think I should go to acupuncture again? And you're like, just pretend you don't have anything to do. Just hang out. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then I want to say it was 2 hours later, I started to text you and I was like, oh, it's probably nothing. And I was talking through myself, like I was talking myself down basically, or talking myself up, whichever, like I was trying to work it out in my text to you. And you're like, like I'm at Columbus Circle. I think I'm going to cut I'm just going to pop in on you. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's totally fine. You don't need to like come. You're like, okay. And that child, and I remember texting John and I'm like, I think you should maybe come home just because I'm not feeling great. I think you should just leave work early just in case. Okay.
Mhm.
And then like 15 minutes later, I'm texting him and I'm like, you need to take a cab home.
Mhm.
And then you walked into our apartment and it was full blown.
Mhm.
If we don't leave right now,
Yep.
this baby is
Mhm.
going to be born in this apartment.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And you were so good because I mean, we had so many transitions of location because I couldn't move. And I remember being in the apartment and you were like, Stephanie, we need to get in the elevator and we need to get in an Uber to the hospital. Because if we don't, the baby will be born here. And I don't want the baby to be born here. And you were like, I'm like, but what? And you're like, no, it's fine. Like, you were so wonderful, but you were also like very practical. And so when we were going down the elevator, and I don't remember going down the elevator, but I remember being in the vestibule in the double doors before we could get outside on Amsterdam, because we lived on Amsterdam at that point. And you were like, we have to go out there. Like, take a minute, but we need to go out there. And I remember you bringing a towel. We got into the Uber and this poor kid's, it was probably like the first day of his job.
Right.
And we put the towel down on the seat and he was like looking back and he's like, what is happening? What is happening? And I remember you buckling me in and I was so angry at you because I'm like, are you for real now? You're going to buckle me in? And you're like, yes, I am. And you like buckled me in and I was so angry. But then you and John, and because I was taking a car, I was so pregnant at that time. I mean, I was so pregnant. And for the record, obviously if this, whatever, I'm 5 feet tall, super pregnant. And I would take the same way to work. And there was construction and you and John are talking and you're having your own conversation of how to get to the hospital. And I did not agree with that. And I'm like sitting there with this stupid seatbelt over me and I'm going, take Broadway. I'm like, take Broadway. And nobody's listening to me. I'm like, take Broadway. But the funniest thing is that when we got to the hospital, we were pulled on the corner and that Uber driver was like, oh my God, thank God. Thank the gods that this woman is out of my vehicle. We left and you were like, you have to walk into those doors. And you were like, Stephanie, and you like grabbed me and you're like, you have to go into those doors. Okay. And I remember like, okay. So then, and this woman, God love her, the volunteers, she's like 105 with the wheelchair. She wanted me to sit in the wheelchair and she's like walking like 5, it's like 5 minutes a step. And I'm like, the child is literally like coming out of me. And it was so funny because, to have 2 births very similar, though Xenia was like, did not want to wait for anybody. It was very much like when we arrived in the waiting room of all the pregnant mamas filling out the paperwork, this child was coming out of me. And so it was like, we were whisked away from bypassing all of that because she was literally like here, you know, which was really crazy. And then, you know, my doctor that was on, she wanted to strip my membranes because my water had not broken yet. And John and I always joke about how I had a very, I was like, oh no, you're not going to strip my membranes. And my water broke literally like everywhere. And then, you know, John's laughing in the background. You know, and then it was like, I felt such a different, it was an easier birth, but it was a harder birth in a totally different way. Like all of the births, I think that you see are different. And, you know, sometimes because my kids came quickly and I was really, it's just in the cards, you know, either you have a quick birth, you have a tough birth, you have an easy, you know, there's all of these things. But I think what I always think about is that it was, you know, I always say I was very fortunate to have very quick births, but it was very, it was also tough in the way that it was, it's such a whirlwind, and it was, it's still really scary. And to have you navigate us and get us there safely and my kids there safely, I think was like, it's not lost on us, you know, because that child would not have been, but I mean, if we had waited 15 more minutes, that would have been like a lobby baby all day long, like for sure, you know?
Yeah. Which happened. Sometimes that's why I'm like, we're moving.
And, you know, it's funny because you can't, it's also your body really, I don't think, you know, particularly for the second, you're not holding on. Like, I think you're really holding on when you give birth the first time, like in a way that, and not that the body's going to do what the, you know, like it's going to do what it's going to do, but it's definitely like, you were right. I mean, from the time that I had contractions to the time that she was born was like crazy time. So, you know, and everything, it's kind of crazy where you were so, and you also knew me at that point. So you were, you know, you were definitely like, do it. You gotta go. Yeah, you weren't playing.
No. Sometimes you have to be firm.
Yeah, but there's a warmth though too. And that's what, like I say it in like loving, because it was done with love. It came from love. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you were trying to be, you know, oh no, you were just, you saw the trajectory of the time.
It's hard. Like that trip to the hospital is really hard. Like people think a lot about their birth. I think they just think about like how the cab driver will feel, you know, about them and not having their birth happen in the car, but not that the experience is just horrible, you know, because you don't want to move from where you are. You don't. And then of course in New York and the pothole bumps, you know what I mean? Like it just adds this extra layer of ridiculousness. The traffic in New York, the chaos of New York, to be actively contracting in labor and then face New York. I mean, if it happens at night, that's great. But sometimes we just hit the sun and the traffic and the OMG.
Yeah. And it was like, OMG.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause both of them were born in the like lunchtime. Both of my
Yeah.
kids were like rush hour, lunchtime. And Xenia specifically, there was so much traffic. It was like lunch hour, daytime traffic, working day. It wasn't a Saturday. It was like full blown.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and
Yes.
then like, what is and it's so funny that you've said that, like thinking of our experiences in the city and just how crazy and cool, but crazy that is, you know, like it's crazy.
Happens all the time. Well, don't hang up, but thank you so much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
but is there anything else you want to add about births and doulas and what doulas do, or what brand new doula should know, or new moms should know, parents?
You know, I think the biggest thing is that to have like somebody is holding you, like actually has you. And I really feel like I was able to experience my births with having that guidance and that security. Like, and not only, you know, not for nothing, and this is not to take away from OBs because they have their own specialty. Like, I think that that's what's so, that was what was so cool about it, is that, you know, you have all of these specialties kind of coming in, right? I do think that for new moms coming in to this experience, particularly for the partners, that it is a, oh my God moment. And you can have as cool-headed as a partner that might not be flappable, might be completely, you know, cool-headed. This experience of seeing your person go through that birth, I don't think he would have had the experience that he had it not been for you, because it was so, it's a lot. Birth is a crime scene, right? It is.
It is a mess.
And, you know, to have, and this, I do have to say, like, the nurses at Mount Sinai, they were like, my first nurse particularly, she was so on it. She was so awesome. There was no, I don't want to say shame, but it was just like, when it's on, you don't know what you're getting into until you do it. And, you know, you were able to have me and then have John be secure too. And like, so we were really supported. I think that was, you can't really put a price on that, because it was so, it's such a transition in your life that was really like, I mean, you were amazing. You were just, it was, I really can't put into words or say enough about like how pivotal you were in that transition for us, for, you know, our family, not only the first time, but also the second time, you know? And I think with your experience, to see all of those different births, but really to know the mothers that are bringing those kids forward, right? That, I think, is the difference between, it's that connection, and it's that, you know, and knowing like what are the triggers, how to like finesse things. And that was, I don't know. I mean, it was, you know, it was amazing. I mean, I say it all the time, like, my girlfriend that had called me, you know, I wish she would have called me, you know, when she was really thinking about it earlier, because I think that it's just, I think everyone should have a doula.
She's doing 4 weeks.
Yeah.
What's the date?
The
I don't do
I
math.
think it's the 10th or the 11th.
Of March, April. April is so busy this year.
What is that like this year in general, or this like
This
post
year, I mean,
pandemic
there's
maybe?
clumps. There's clumps, and I don't always turn down. Like people just space, but then we get clumps, and like April, and all my friends are booked, and I don't know what happened. Now we're just turning them down. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
I'm
mean,
already above what I usually take.
so how do you
Because
space your births out? Like, how do you know? Like, do you go month? Like, how do you space your births?
secret, we can't tell you, but I
Oh,
will.
yeah,
So-
that's right.
No, but so when I worked with you, I was doing my full-time like 4-ish a month. You could do 4 to 5 a month and they just don't go at the same time. They just don't. But if you tell the clients that up front, they'll freak out. So you have to say they're so spaced out. I prefer, to be honest, taking people due on the same day than space, because they're not going to go at the same time. The math, the statistical math, same due date, living in the same city, choosing the same doula. If it happens, God bless. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not. I've had people go close, but not exactly the same. Years ago, I had 2 at once, or so I thought. So I sent someone to back me up to one, and I went to one, and I realized the one I was at was too early. I'm like, you're fine, I'm gonna leave. Went to the other one, took over, did that whole birth, finished it. Went to the other one that was slower, did that whole birth. I'm not saying they can't go at the same time, they just don't.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
trust me, just trust me. We'll probably miss a birth for a hurricane, COVID, I'm sick, someone else is sick, someone fell down a flight of stairs. That's more possible than like someone in my life is in the hospital than my 2 clients being in the hospital.
Wow. Got it.
You know what I mean? Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I really think it's going to work out the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Hurricane Sandy, just because we couldn't move. So we all just passed around clients, like whoever was closest to, we
Yep.
just talked around, and I took within my square miles and you took that. And I had a client who was really upset because she really wanted me, you know, she was a person of color. She wanted a person of color. I'm like, hun, it's a hurricane. Like, I can't help you.
Yeah.
I can get you someone. She's white. She's great. Take it, please. So she went, and actually she helped her with something that I did not know about, which I now know from that, right? So like, I wouldn't have even been able to help you with that. She knew that. I didn't know that. The gods knew. She was your doula, okay? And now we both learned, and now I have that. Thank you.
That's amazing. That is really, really cool.
Yeah,
But
so
also
trust,
like it's gotta be, that's trust is real, like that's gotta be
yeah.
really hard.
Yeah, you will get who you're supposed to get. I really feel that. And if I'm supposed to be there, I will. And if God doesn't want me there, then I'm not, you know, and that's just it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just it. Of course, try to be there if you're a brand new doula, like keep your commitments, but you know, yeah.
Yeah. And also to know that you have you have a backup, right? You're not navigating this, oh, sorry, good luck with that. You have, and that's the other thing. Like I knew, those were one of my questions. I remember, well, what happens if like something, because you're always planning for, contingency, a disaster.
And you have to also not center yourself as so precious to her birth. Which is hard because we do get attached to you.
Mm-hmm.
But we are not the only one who can be great support at your birth, and to think it's all about you as the doula. No, it's all about the client, and there's a lot of great doulas out here. And like, yeah.
It's amazing. When did you know you wanted to be a doula?
Well, midwifery was my thought at first, but like a lot of people, my image of what a midwife is was not correct. What people think a doula is, wait. People think, I can't get my thoughts straight. People think a midwife acts like what a doula is.
Yes.
So when I had my first, and because I was interested in birth beforehand,
Right. I
and
remember.
so I was with a midwifery practice. I'm like, I don't need a doula because I'm so smart. I was wrong. Okay. Everyone needs a doula. I don't care. Right. So it helped that I knew about birth. Like I timed everything well, but I still needed a doula.
Yeah.
So what I thought, because I was with a midwifery practice, they were going to be in my personal, physical space doing that thing that doulas do, that they're like right here, touching you, holding you. And the midwife just stuck her fingers in me and left.
Yep.
And then they chart. I'm like, what is she writing? Like she's just over there charting. What is she doing? Why isn't she here doing all that ooh stuff, right?
Yes.
I want ooh. And yeah, so the birth was fine. There were some things, and I learned because I had a tiny thing imperfect and it irks me. So I just know as a mother, like little things that just irk you, right? And then so for my next birth, I got a doula who had two kids too, because I was like, the only person that can speak to me is her, because she's had two kids. Everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
She's the only one. But then after that experience, because she was right here,
Mhm.
and she put me in her book, and it's like, obviously we don't have the same thoughts and memories and experience. And in the book, she said that like she was behind me, and her arm was pinned and going numb, and she tried to move her arm, and I like barked at her, right? And she said she was dying. And then I remember I was like, whoever moved better stop it. Like,
Oh my God.
I understand the two sides. So poor girl arm was just dead behind me somewhere pinned. And I was like, you have to stay there. Like that's just it, honey. I don't care if you die, right? Okay, so how I became a doula. My mother's story too. My mother gave birth to me in New York City without any interventions, kicked down the door. My aunt had a home birth. I was 10 when she had a home birth. I was not there, but just being aware of that, right? So my family was crunchy. The farm, have you heard of the farm?
Yes.
So, which these kids today don't know about the farm, which is crazy. The birth community doesn't know this stuff anymore because I'm getting old. But me and my mom were down on the farm when I was 4 years old. Not for this.
You told me like that's craziness. Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
and there was this birth film about the farm that we all went to the premiere of, and we saw it, and everyone was like, did you see those births? No. So for me, I've seen births live. So seeing births on screen, and like, meh, you know what I mean? I was like, did you see the food? Because I remember being there as a kid, the food was so good, right? And so when I watched, I was like, I remember that. I remember those blueberries. I remember that. I remember those fields. I was like, the births. I'm like, see the blueberries? Births, yeah, sure, fine. Yeah. But I feel called at births. I was taking care of kids at a very young age. When you go to hotel resorts and they have childcare? Well, I did that in high school, and I quickly learned I don't really like kids. I like infants. I'm like, oh, especially like 20 kids is on vacation. Oh,
yes. Oh my God.
Babies. Yeah. So I was in a room with like 20 babies all day, and I loved it. And I was just, yeah. So that was my start at like 15, 16. I started doing that. So and I had my kid young, but I had literally taken care of hundreds of babies at that point too. So I'm very comfortable just handling them. Some parents get scared how I flip around their baby like, woo. I
Well,
know.
That's another thing you taught us. Like, I remember, I mean, because we have multiple pictures of you, like with even when like after, like, post birth coming to the house and like seeing like just the way you manipulate the baby and like kind of like look and like inspect like, and how you handle them. And also like, and I like with Octavia, fun fact, you said, yeah, to your house, when I come to your apartment after the baby, you're not going to be in a shirt. You're just going to like, you're not going to want, and I was like, okay, Maisha, like, like, let's not go there. Okay. Sure enough, like you planned it out, but you have a way of you just know. And so that whole like lactation post, doula care was also really helpful. And like,
Yeah, that started right after I had my first baby. And then my friend had a baby 9 months after I had a baby. Obviously, she saw mine and got pregnant because he was so cute. Right?
yeah.
So I came to her house postpartum and she was home alone. Her husband was at work and she was just engorged. And I had my baby in bed who was, 9 months old and her brand new baby. And I just started to hand express for her because, I didn't have a plan. Like, I didn't think you should have a pump. Like, there was no planning here. It was just like, oh my God. And I was just hand express. And we're friends from college, right? So I'm hand expressing. So we used to party, right? And now I'm like hand expressing her breast and she's like crying and her baby's crying, whatever. I was just like, Maisha. And I'm like, what? She goes, it's weird. And I'm like, what? Not that you're milking me. But that you're milking me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care either.
That is what I'm talking about.
Right. I'm like, I know. Sometimes I forget, like, you have to ask permission to touch breasts, and I'm just so used to them. I'm just like, let me have it. Okay. Yeah. It's like pulling food out of the fridge. I'm not like, oh yeah, pause. May I touch, like, I'm gonna get milk?
Yeah. And that, I mean, I think that's what I mean by like you can't, I mean, I guess you could teach it, right? Like, I'm sure,
I'm
but
trying.
like,
Yeah. And I think we have to know we're more comfortable than we think we are and tune into that. Like, I had a mom who said she's afraid of blood, like before the birth, like she's terrified of blood, right? And I'm like, how are you about your period? She's like, oh, totally forgot she doesn't freak out on her period. Like, took it for granted. I'm like, yeah, we look at blood every month and we don't go, oh my God, your first period, you probably had a panic, maybe your first year or so, but like, it's routine. Like, give yourself credit, like tuning into the credit that like your vagina bleeding is a common occurrence and you're okay.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's funny, sometimes if I have like a long birth and I come home and I have like a period, like I have my period, I'm like, that's enough bleeding vaginas, okay? Like, I just can't look at anymore.
Oh my God.
I was
Yeah.
like, you too, honey.
Seriously?
I'm out.
Oh my God, that is so funny.
But like, this is our world, like we really see it, even if it's your first birth, but you and your uterus and have had a relationship for a long time, so it's new, but also just tuning into that,
Yeah.
and being a mother, even though my kids are grown, still affects my work and helps me because it's, being a mom is being a mother. You know, like I have a client and her baby was breech, meaning head up. So she had a planned cesarean, right? I have not had that birth, but she had that birth. Maybe I won't tell her story in case she wants to come and tell, but it was really intense, super complicated, frightening. And I held that space for her, not because I've had that, but I've had kids and I know that fear. I've had health emergencies with my kids and know what it feels like to have a health emergency with kids.
Yeah.
And hold space for that. And we still talk. So she didn't have the birth that I had. I didn't have the birth that she had, but we're still,
Yeah.
you know, mom.
Right. And that, yeah. And that was really, you know, you want someone that gets that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't matter how the birth, I mean, it matters how the birth goes, but I'm just saying, like, you know, people ask me about my own birth. I'm like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's more like just being a parent, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. Just the hard part. Birth is just knock, knock, knock. Hey. So thank you, honey. I'm gonna turn off record, but stay on, okay?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you so much.
You are the best.
You are. As my kids do this.
Oh,